Welcome back. She's an artist, creative editor, founder, host, and animator of the Subway Portraits podcast. Please welcome Christina Baez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. What do you think about the bacon, egg, and cheese? Like, it gets so expensive.
You know, I remember paying $2.50 with extra butter and extra cheese.
Oh my
Extra
gosh.
butter, okay.
Okay, and now it's just so unfortunate to hear not only like the Bronx's landscape is changing, but also now bacon, egg, and cheese,
Yes.
such a staple of New York,
know.
and something that has just been an affordable and convenient meal for so many
Yes.
communities. So,
Yeah.
like you guys said earlier, like we're paying, but we're not happy about it.
Right, exactly. We're gonna pay for it because, of course, I mean, I want my bacon, egg, and
We
cheese
gotta- you
with
know.
a little butter too. I've been on to
That is
that's
the
new
trick.
for me. That's
Yeah.
new for me, but
I
it's
don't-
really good.
I don't know about the mayo, but
Right.
the butter, yeah, we
Yeah,
gotta
just
have
a
the
little
butter.
bit of butter.
It adds the creaminess. The
Yeah.
butter does too. That's what it does.
Okay, well,
Maybe.
we'll give it a try. I'll supplement that for some cream cheese.
Yeah, yes.
Some cream cheese, yes, for sure. All right, so the Subway podcast, right? The
Yeah.
Subway Portraits podcast. How was it born? You know, tell us a little bit about where you got the idea to do the podcast.
So around like 2018, 2019, I living up here in the Bronx, the company that I worked for moved their offices down to like the southern tip of Manhattan. So my commute was like almost 2 hours to get there, almost 2 hours to get home. So it was a long time of just commuting. And I would read, I would listen to music, listen to podcasts. And then just one day I felt so compelled to draw the person that I was sitting across from on the subway. And I didn't have any drawing materials, but I downloaded a quick sketch app onto my cell phone and I did like a quick finger drawing. And from then on, this new project was born where I was drawing people that just were like, that brought me in, like that I was just compelled to draw on the subway. And eventually I just began to get so curious, like, what are these people experiencing on their day-to-day
Right.
on these commutes? Because I've been riding the subway all my life and I know anything goes underground.
Yes, very
So
much.
I put out a call to action. People were responsive, and I'm building up this database of memories of people's experiences riding on the subway. And the podcast was born, and each episode is less than 15 minutes, and each one has about like 5 to 6 stories, and they range from hilarious to mundane to scary, everything in
Yes,
between.
yes. I can attest. I have been like listening to the podcast, and there's like some stories that you're like, I feel like we were on the same train because I've experienced something similar.
Yeah.
Or just like, someone who's like, you sound familiar. Like I may know you from somewhere or something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot definitely that you can get from the podcast. And I mean, 4 hours total commuting is like
Back and forth is insane.
Yeah, no, it was a lie. I don't work there anymore.
good, good. Because I was gonna say that's I mean, that's 4 hours that you're not getting, that no one's getting back,
paid.
you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, could you imagine like a 2 hour commute, which I can imagine, all the things that you can do on the train during that time?
right.
All the
right.
things you could see, all the people you could see, all the sketches. you could
Exactly,
draw.
exactly.
Yes.
And then the subway has been around over 100 years now. So I kept thinking, like, what were the people back then experiencing on the subway? And we have no way of knowing, like, any of the firsthand accounts from then. So I was like, I'm gonna make this project. We're gonna start preserving memories, and yeah, here we are.
That's amazing because, and it's funny you say that because even now when you think about it, back in the day, the trains didn't always have air conditioners,
Right, that's right.
Remember, like, and this is not this far back, but the red trains, the lights would flicker all the time. It was like, it was almost as if the train didn't have enough power. Like the
Yeah.
lights would like turn off and then it'll turn back on.
Right.
So it's funny to think about how now our experience is completely different. We have, I mean, if a train is without air conditioner, we're ready to go on Twitter and be like,
Right.
car number
Yeah.
1944 needs
Yeah.
to be taken out of
Yes,
service.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the name, the Subway Portraits? Like, what about that rung true to you?
So just like in traditional portraits, they really capture like the essence and the emotions of the subject. I feel like these stories work in that way. We're building up this archive of stories that sort of paint this picture, metaphorically, this portrait of the subway system, one of the biggest public transportation systems in the world.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because, and that you started sketching, because I can't imagine, I've never sketched anyone on the train,
Yeah.
but I see people every now and then sketching, you know,
I've seen
sketching
it.
people. And sometimes they kind of do it like a little bit, you know, kind of like on the low. But I mean, 4 hours, there's a lot that you can sketch.
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
interesting that that is the name of the podcast and that it was born from these sketches that you did.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're doing these sketches, has anyone ever noticed you? How has that been?
No, luckily, you know, I'm really shy. So luckily, no one's ever noticed. I think what's helped is that I'm doing them on my cell phone, and I had a privacy screen protector on the screen, so
Smart.
so no one's ever noticed.
Yeah, because usually, you know, you see people like, I see like the super like fancy pens that come out.
Right, with the
Right.
huge iPad and
Yeah.
everyone is just like
Exactly.
sketching and you doing
Yeah.
it right on your phone.
Right on my phone.
How do you work up the courage to kind of do that? Like if there's someone like right directly in front of you,
Yeah.
how do you work up the courage to just
know?
like start looking at them and do that?
I think it's a New York thing, a Bronx thing. You know, you just gotta go for it. So just like a quick like, oh,
That is
and,
very
and
true.
I'm done.
Yeah.
It was a good exercise as an artist in like speed. You know, get this person down quickly before they leave because you never know when they're getting off.
That is true.
True.
You
Yeah.
don't know when they're gonna get off.
Yeah.
Although back in the day, you may have an idea of like
when.
where someone was gonna
This
get
is
off on the
true as
train.
well.
That has also changed. So now you don't really know.
That's true.
But I mean, I even thinking about how, you know, you're talking about like you using an iPad. I'm not used. I remember seeing people sketching like on an actual
Right.
paper
Paper.
pad,
Yeah.
you know, and just being like, wow, they're like so intricately, you know, like drawing and whatnot. And to see how it has now evolved
Yeah.
to doing it digitally,
Yeah.
you know, which it's funny how things have evolved and that your podcast itself is about the evolution of people's experiences on the subway from, you know, back in the day to what it is currently today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Has anyone ever reacted? You know, I mean, like you
Yeah.
said, no one has like looked at you or anything. You know, you
Yeah.
worked up the courage. You know, because you're you know, from New York and you get it done. But no one has ever, or have you ever experienced someone else sort of like looking at weird, like, what are you doing? Like, I see you on your phone, but you know, has you never had like a
I've
weird
never had any experience
That's
like
good.
that, but I do like post them on social media and I like mark the time in the subway line. So some people are like, oh, is this me? Could be you. We'll never
Yeah,
know.
You never know. You never know. And it's funny because, you know, on platforms like Reddit, people will go on there and
right.
say, hey, I saw such and such person or I had such and such experience on the train. If this is you out there,
Yes.
reach out to me.
Missed connections.
Missed
Yes.
connections,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what it's
Yeah.
called. Didn't they have something like that on like Craigslist?
They did.
Yes, I think
I'm
it
not sure
still
if they still
exists.
do.
I don't know. But if you guys want to talk about your subway connections, leave them on the
Right
show.
on
Right,
Subway.
that's right. That's right. Hey, you know what? I saw someone that looked this way, you know. Let me know. Holla at me, you know.
Okay, let's
We've
make
evol-
some love connections,
Yes.
some love matches.
Yes, you never know. What's one of the most impactful stories that you've heard on the podcast?
So the New York City subway is so fundamental to what New York City is. It's really ingrained in the fabric, and these stories really help to preserve the cultural and social significance of the subway. So I would argue that they're all impactful in their own way. But if I had to choose one, the one that really has resonated with me and with my audience would be the one where a commuter shared their experience during 9/11 underground. And 9/11 is such a pivotal moment in New York City's history
Right.
that I felt so honored that this person was comfortable enough to share and relive that experience to preserve the memory on the show. And they really, you know, talked about how their destination was the World Trade Center,
Wow.
how they were riding on the 1 and 2 lines, how there was an eerie silence. There were warnings of things falling from the sky from other New Yorkers who were telling people stay in the subway for safety. And you know, you can really listen to this commuter retell the story. It's on the first episode of the podcast, but I think that one's particularly impactful because it can help educate the future generations that don't have
Definitely.
direct or won't have direct memories to
Right.
9/11.
So, not only does the Subway Portraits podcast, you know, have your sketches, your stories, but now you have the YouTube series.
Yes.
So it's an animated series with all of your sketches and the stories.
And the
Tell us a little bit
stories.
about like how did you come up with that?
So, people were really into sharing stories. We're building up this archive, and a lot of the stories come from when times where people weren't recording on their cell phones, where you don't see these stories on social media. So people are sharing stuff as far back as the 90s, the 80s, and just as I continue to listen, I'm going back into my artist roots. I'm like, I can visualize these. I want to draw these, and I realize not everyone listens to podcasts, so I am going to draw these. I have been drawing them. So I have 2D animations, like a stop motion animation aesthetic, and just repurposing these stories for an entirely new audience. Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I checked out the YouTube channel, and I love the sketches. I remember I was telling
Thank
you,
you.
I was just like, how did you do that? Like, it's so cool just to see like the sketches come to life, you know?
yeah.
And it just rings true to not just your artistry and your creativity, but it really captures like the essence of New York on the, on the channel.
Yeah,
So
thank
I
you.
great job. I loved it. I really did. Listen, make sure you stream the Subway Portraits podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Submit your own stories at www.thesubwayportraits.com and subscribe to their YouTube channel for more animated stories. Christina, thank you so much for spending time with
Thank
us
you
today.
both.
We're really honored to have you here.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, thank you, thank you.
So happy to be here. Thank
Great.
you.
Yes. Coming up next, Guess That Salary.